Hey guys, this is my playthrough of Pathfinder WOTR of the Righteous. So I've decided to create a video about some of the companions, just to do a comparison and to help you guys decide which of them you want to take along with you in your main party. So I'm currently somewhere into the game in Act 3. So by this time you will have hopefully obtained most of the companions. There are quite a lot of them. They're quite interesting characters as well. So I think one of the biggest decisions you'll need to decide in this game is which of them you want to take with you, because there are, I think in total you can get about 13 companions, but in fact you only have 5 slots in your main party, so you will have to make some difficult decisions. I must say, one thing I do like about this game in particular is the fact that you can have up to 6 people in the main party. I think that makes a really big difference, gives you a lot more variety in terms of your playstyle. So this is my main character. I'm currently in Dresden, which is the main command center after Act 3 begins, and where I think most of the subsequent game continues from. So let's go to the menus. So for each companion, I'm just going to go through their gender, their race, their class, their subclass, their alignment, their personality, where you first pick them up, their combat style, their equipment, their place in the party, which I think they should go, and lastly whether or not they do merit place in the main party. Just a disclaimer, obviously this is your play style is very personal to you, so go with what you enjoy. It's just my personal views in terms of what I enjoy and how I like to put together the party. So I'm going to start off with my main character, which obviously is not one of the companions. Your choice of your main character will obviously have a knock-on effect on who you bring into your party in terms of the balance of your team, and obviously that will be a big factor. So this is my main character. His name is Erasmus. My character is currently about level 9, so he is a human cavalier. As you can see, his strength and constitution are quite high, so he's predominantly my tank in the game. So I haven't chosen a subclass for him actually. Obviously he doesn't really have in terms of personality. So I keep him at the front basically, send him in first to take the aggro, and then send in the other guys after him. So I've got him equipped with heavy armor. This piece of equipment, Carapace, I think this is what you get when you have to fight, forgotten his name now, the dwarf guy you have to fight his brother first, and he comes up with this pretty useful heavy armor. So I've got him in heavy armor to help with his to make sure he's take lots of aggro up front, with a also equipped with a heavy shield as well, and a mace. So strong defensively, he can take a lot of threat up front. And that sort of helps me determine the rest of the party around him. So I'm just going to go through them in the order that they are here. So next we have Social. So Social, he is a male human. His cleric. His alignment is neutral good. His personality, he's pretty much your sort of good guy, very sort of honest, upright character, which is what you'd normally expect of a cleric. It's probably useful if you want to have like a good playthrough. If you want to have more sort of chaotic evil playthrough, he might challenge some of your decisions. But overall, I don't think he really stands out as in terms of his personality. It's quite similar to that of Seela. He's very sort of balanced and upright, nothing sort of out of the ordinary. So like I said, his personality for me personally doesn't really stand out compared with certainly some of the other characters. You meet him pretty much at the beginning of Act 2. after you've taken over Canabras, and he's introduced as somebody to be available in your team, I think from the Queen. In terms of his equipment, I basically got him in medium armor, not front row, sort of what I'd say sort of my sort of fourth slot, healer slot, which is pretty much in my second row. And I think that's a useful place for him because a lot of his abilities will be basically he needs to be in the middle, and the aura will be around him. So you want to have him in the middle of your party to make sure that everybody benefits from the some of his support spells. In terms of the having in the main party, I think it's certainly helpful to have a healer in your main party. For me, it's predominantly going to be a choice between either Socio or Darren. I think they both play that role quite well, I think, in terms of their skills and abilities, but obviously they have very different personalities. So I think a lot of it's about your preference in terms of personality. I've got him predominantly acting in a range with a crossbow, so he can do range damage and then complement with his support spells. His range of spells is pretty impressive, got to be said. He's got at the lower levels a lot of support spells, but as you get on, he gets some attack spells as well, and obviously the big one, he's got some really useful healing abilities. So very useful as a healer, and yeah, I think it's definitely worth having either him or Darren in your main party. Next we have Nino. So she is a Kitsune wizard. Her subclass is Scroll Savant. She is neutral. In terms of her personality, I mean, to be honest, I rarely use her. I do find her quite irritating. She's her background pretty much, she's sort of a scientist, and she basically enjoys sort of experiments and things like that. But to be honest, she's quite an odd character. I think it's supposed to be amusing, but I personally just find it irritating. So I don't really use her a lot. But I mean, she's not bad in terms of her utility. I think her place in the party would pretty much be sort of the back row, dealing range damage. So I've got her with a crossbow, and predominantly she's going to be using her magic. I think at the lower levels, it does take a while to build up her spell arsenal, but as she gets on, you can see she's got wide range of spells. I mean, she doesn't have as wide a range of spells as some of the others, but like I said, she's got some pretty powerful stuff. So in terms of her utility, she's actually quite effective, but I personally think that Ember, I think it's generally going to be a choice between her and Ember. I think Ember is the better choice, both in terms of her personality as well, and she's pretty similar in terms of her skills and capabilities. So moving on, we have Woljif. So he is a tiefling rogue, specialized as an eldritch scoundrel. Pretty much in these, I've followed on the classes that they've started with and the recommended builds as per the game. This is my second playthrough overall, but my first in terms of the main game. My first playthrough was in the early access stage. So I've sort of kept him as an eldritch scoundrel, which means that he can do magic as well. He's as a chaotic neutral, he's very hard to control. He likes to do things his own way. Personality, really interesting personality. He's very much sort of lovable rogue. He's quite apt in terms of his class. He's kind of person you can't really trust because it seems like he's always got his own agenda, but he is quite charming and amusing, gotta say. So I think he's a really good companion to have in the party. Quite humorous, and it sort of winds other people up quite a lot. One thing I like about this game is the interchange between different companions and how they kind of rile each other up, and he's quite good at that. So I think yeah, he's a good choice to have in the party. You meet him pretty early on in the game. Once you've been through the tutorial and once you've reached sort of the got back above ground in Canabris, he'll be waiting for you in the prison, and you can pick him up there in the inn where you first start off. And his in terms of his equipment, the thing with him is, as an Eldritch Scoundrel, he can't use armor, which is a bit of an issue if you're going to use him in close combat, because he is a bit squishy, can't take too much damage, so that's one issue if you're going to keep him as an Eldritch Scoundrel. In choice of weapons, I think you can use him both in a melee or a ranged position. I mean, I quite like using him because he already comes with the dual wield ability, and he does very good damage in the capacity. So I quite like using him with short swords, and in the sort of third slot behind the front two. Usually have a tank and off tank and keep him just behind, so he can engage with the enemy after the front two, and go in from the back and do some serious damage that way. I think he's quite good in that role. But you could also use, I've got him with a crossbow as well, you could also use him in a ranged role further back in perhaps the back row. It's just that there's quite a lot of other companions who I think are probably better in that role. In terms of his spells, he's actually got quite a good range of spells, which can do both in terms of support and in terms of damage as well. So he is pretty good all-rounder, but it's just that as a sort of melee rogue, he's a bit squishy, and in terms of a out-and-out spellcaster, he's there's probably others who are probably better. But I think overall, pretty all-rounded character, good personality, fun person to have alongside with you. So yeah, for me, it's mainly between him and Greyball in that sort of third slot behind Pathfinder front two. If I'm not using Greyball, I'll probably keep him in the main party. Moving on, we have Venduag. So she is a mongrel fighter, female. She is neutral evil. Very interesting personality. So basically, my first playthrough, I decided to go with Lan in place of Venduag. In this second playthrough, I've chosen to go with Venduag to get a different experience. She's a very different personality to him. So basically, at the beginning of the game, you have to choose between having one or the other of them in your team. They're quite similar in terms of the role they play in the team. But later in the game, you can, I believe, you can actually choose to have both of them. I still haven't managed to do that. Trying to follow through the quest, see if I can actually get both of them in the team. But at the moment, just got one. In terms of her personality, she's very different to Lan. She is, I mean, she's pretty nasty. She's all about power, and she'll basically do anything to have power. She's quite ruthless, but the thing is, if you do recruit her in a team, she does have a sort of unerring devotion towards you as the leader, which in some ways I'm kind of glad to have her on my team rather than against me. I think you'd be quite nasty as an adversary. So in terms of that, it is quite it's quite endearing in terms of her. Once you get her in the team, once she respects you as a leader, she is quite loyal in her own way, but she does have her own way of doing things. But very interesting personality. In terms of where you meet her, she's one of the first companions you'll get in the game in the prologue. Pretty much after you you get Seela and Camellia. You have to go into Netherhome, and then you'll meet the two mongrels, Lan and Vendragon. You've got to choose between them, so you get pretty early in the game, and you have to choose between one of the two. In terms of her combat style, although she is a fighter, as you can see from her stats, she's got very high dexterity and she comes armed with a bow. So the best way to use her really is as a ranged fighter, which is probably not my preferred build for a fighter, but it's quite effective. She is quite good in ranged combat, and I've just got her equipped with light armor to make sure she maintains a high dexterity and do some serious damage. She is pretty effective in that role, to be honest, but she doesn't have any spells, as you can see, so she's pretty much about physical damage. If you are going to have her in the main party, I'd probably have her in the back row, probably 5th or 6th slot, doing ranged damage that way. Personally, although she's an interesting character, I think there's others that are probably more fun to have along. So I personally tend not to use her that much. I will normally have in that role either Camellia or Arushale in that role, and I just prefer them overall. But yeah, pretty strong companion, interesting, very entertaining to have in your party. Particularly if you want to go with a bit of sort of chaotic evil, you might get along with her quite well. But yeah, interesting choice of companion. It's just personally, I prefer to go with one of the others. Moving on, we have Camellia. Now, Camellia is a half-elf shaman. Her subclass is Spirit Hunter. As you can set up, she's got quite a high dexterity. I've got some augments on there as well. Her main stat will be wisdom for spell casting. Now, in terms of her alignment, comes up with undetectable. This is actually part of her plot, and you discover this later on in the game. I haven't got there yet, but yes, to start off with, this undetectable. She's quite a mysterious character. She, in terms of personality, she's quite charming. She's an aristocrat, so that comes through in the way she comes across. She seems to get on quite well with Darren, who comes from a similar background. But she is quite secretive at the beginning, and in a way that makes her more interesting because you want to find out a bit more about her and what makes her tick and why her alignment comes up with undetectable. So I think she's a good companion to have in the team. In terms of where you meet her, pretty much at the beginning of the game. She's the second companion you're going to bump into. You can't really miss her, and pretty much she'll stay with you from that point onwards. In terms of a combat style, if you keep her as a shaman, I think she's probably, I mean, you can use her either in melee or in ranged. She comes at the beginning armed with a rapier and a shield. When I say shield, a buckler, like a very small shield. I mean, I've used her in a sort of dual wielding capacity with 2 rapiers, but generally I tend to use her in a ranged capacity with a crossbow. She's not bad with a crossbow because she does have high dexterity, and she's got quite a lot of magic available as well, both in terms of support and in terms of damage. Her spell book is pretty full. And she's got some good healing abilities. She can summon creatures, she can do support spells, and she's got damage spells as well. So very good all-round spellcaster. But in terms of an out and right spellcaster, I think probably Ember or Nina are more effective. in terms of a place in the party, I would probably put her personally back row. So I mean, I've got her equipped with Mithril Chain Shirt, which is light armor, because she will be casting spells. She can wear armor, but because she's going to be casting spells, you don't want her to have. I think light armor is the way to go, because obviously otherwise there is going to be more of a spell failure chance. The Mithril Chain Shirt is quite good actually, because it's only got a spell failure chance of 10, which is pretty decent. So I think that's the way to go. So I tend to use it in a ranged role, as both in support and in terms of damage spells. But again, I think she's quite similar to Woljif. Both her and Woljif, with the high dexterity, they're quite good at sort of opening locks and checking traps as well. So I'd say similar to Woljif. She's quite an all-round character. I mean, I personally tend to use either her or Chalet in that kind of slot 5, I would say, on the back row as a ranged caster. Moving on, there's quite a lot of companions. So next we have Seela. So Seela is a lawful good human paladin. You see from her stats, she's got, and I've got some augments here, but she's got high strength and high constitution. So she's pretty much set up originally as a tank. However, because my main character is a tank himself, in this playthrough, I've set her up more as a off tank, more as a damage dealer. So I've swapped out her shield and longsword for a great sword, so she can do a bit more damage and be a bit more free in that off tanking role. I've got her set up with heavy armor, got 4 plate plus 1, so basically want her front row taking aggro and also giving it back, supporting the main tank, but you could use her as an out and out tank as well. In terms of personality, she's very much the typical paladin, all about righteousness, gallantry. I think she's she's a good character, and I think you want to have at least one person in your party like that. It kind of stands for all that's good and pure, as they say. So placing the party, I've already mentioned, pretty much front row, either tank or off tank, I think is the best way to go with her. She doesn't do bad damage, but predominantly it's her sustainability and her paladin abilities are quite effective against demons as well. I personally will tend to use either her or swap her out with Rhaegal in that off tank role. But yeah, otherwise, if I'm not using Rhaegal, I'll probably have her along. Next we have Ember. Now Ember is an elf witch, and the subclass is stigmatized witch. She's got quite high charisma because that's her spellcasting stat. Her alignment is neutral good. So in terms of her views, she doesn't really believe in any of the deities that they have, but she is all about sort of getting on with people and being good and caring for others. In terms of personality, I think she's a really good character. Her backstory is the fact that she was actually put in a fire along with her father, but in fact she was able to survive because somebody saved her, but she's got sort of burns to her skin. But despite that, she doesn't have any hatred towards people who did that, and she believes in sort of helping everyone, and she has a certain sort of innocence about her, I would say, which I think in this game, which is quite a dark game, I would say, all about sort of demons taking over the world, and we've got some quite strong personalities. I think she makes a nice contrast. I think the sort of Goody Two Shoes role does sort of rile a lot of companions up, particularly Camellia. But I think that's part of the fun. Yeah, I think she's a fun character to have along. Interesting backstory, and her sort of her naive innocence creates quite a lot of good humor in the game, I would say. So I normally have her in this sort of slot 6, back row, doing ranged damage. So I have her equipped with a longbow and the quarterstaff if she needs to. But predominantly she's going to be using spells. She doesn't, as a witch, she doesn't have to memorize her spells, but she's got quite a good arsenal of both support and healing spells, along with damage spells as well. So pretty effective as a ranged spellcaster. And for me, I would say I'd either use her or Nino, I would say, in that ranged casting role. But as I don't really like Nino in terms of her personality, I would definitely go with Ember. And for me, she's pretty much in the main party all the time. Okay, so next we have Arushale. So she is chaotic neutral succubus. She's a ranger, and her subclass is espionage expert. So her backstory is that she is a demon, and she was very evil, but then she sort of saw the light, and she's kind of taken a turn around. Now she's fighting against the demons, which is a very interesting backstory, and she's sort of dealing with the struggles of that, which makes her, I think, quite an interesting companion to have along. So quite an interesting personality. She does come across as quite sweet, despite being a demon. So I think she's a good companion to have along. Also creates some interesting dialogue, because a lot of the others are somewhat skeptical of her, that she might sort of turn back into her evil ways, and for her as well, she accepts that it's a struggle and she's trying to change herself. So that in itself makes it quite interesting. Now you come across her quite late in the game, well into Act 3. You meet her initially when you go to Dresden in the prison, and if you release her, then you'll get a chance to recruit her later on. So you'll have to wait quite some time before you get her in the party, but she's got some pretty impressive stats, high dexterity, and so she's very good as a ranged damage dealer. She got her equipped with a longbow, but she's also got a decent arsenal of spells, which wouldn't necessarily expect as a ranger. I mean, you've got some sort of more sort of nature-based abilities, but also support spells as well, and some damage spells as well. So I haven't had her for long, to be honest. She's one of the most recent acquisitions, but yeah, certainly an interesting companion, and I would normally have her in that sort of slot 5 on the back row, doing ranged damage and spell damage as well where appropriate. I would probably have either herself or Camellia in that slot at the back. So that is Arushale. Next we have Darren. So Darren is an Aasimar. He is neutral evil, and he is an oracle. Now he is a very interesting companion in terms of his personality. He's all about basically enjoying himself and not taking himself too seriously. He's got a very I'd say sharp, sarcastic nature, which is quite amusing, and creates some really interesting dialogue. The other thing is, after a while, it can kind of grate on you because you can't actually have a normal conversation with him. He'll never give up on the sarcasm. That's just his way. So, like I said, for me personally, I think he makes quite an interesting contrast and creates Some interesting discussion, particularly with the other companions, who likes to try and wind people up. But I can imagine after a while, some people he might get on your nerves. But yeah, personally, I think he's an interesting, very entertaining companion to have along with you. In terms of where you meet him, so basically in Act 1, you have to go slightly off the beaten path, and you'll come across an NPC coming out and asking you for help, and then you have to go off to his mansion, and then you can recruit him that way. You won't necessarily bump into him, so you need to watch out for this NPC who will lead you to him when you're wandering around the market square in Canabras. Otherwise, you could potentially miss him, and he is an important companion in terms of his combat style. For me, pretty much in sort of slot 4 behind the melee fighters. I have him in a ranged role with a crossbow. He can do some damage with that, but his main role in the party is going to be healing. As you can see from his spellbook, it's predominantly support and healing spells. He's got a few damage spells. Predominantly, it's all about healing and support, and he is exceptional in that role. Pretty much you want to go either with him or Social for out and out healers. I keep him in the middle of the party so he can buff all of the team at once. He's very effective in that role, and you can't really go wrong if you choose either him or Social in that role. And I normally go with him in the main party rather than Social, simply because I find, if I've got Seela in the party, I find that her and Soci are probably quite similar in the outlook, so I like to just mix things up a bit. I have him basically equipped with medium armor, and yeah, that way he's I think that's appropriate for where he is in the group. Next we have Greybor. Now Greybor is a neutral dwarf, and he is a slayer, so he's all about damage. In terms of his personality, for him it's all about money basically. He is a bounty hunter, so he'll pretty much do anything for money, and that's his main motivation in life. He doesn't get too involved in terms of the politics or the good and evil. For him it's just about making money, which is fair enough. It makes him quite different from the rest of the companions. In terms of his personality, I wouldn't say it really jumps out in terms of his personality. He's a bit dry, but I think in terms of his backstory, that he's pretty much a cold, heartless bounty hunter, makes it quite interesting, and creates some interesting dialogues with some of the other characters, particularly those who are quite passionate about their approach about doing things for good, for the greater good, and fighting the evil, and so on. In terms of his combat style, he comes with a dual wielding ability, so he comes with already some pretty decent weapons. So I basically have him equipped with 2 axes, and we're looking to create maximum damage that way. I tend to keep him in slot 3, just behind the front 2, the tank and the off tank, so they can engage first, and then he can go in and do some major damage. So he is a bit more, he can take a bit more damage than somebody like Waljif, because he can't wear armor. I've got him equipped with medium armor, so he's not going to slow down too much. He can still do some damage whilst having some survivability. In the second slot of weapons, I've got him with a shield and a mace, in case you want to take more of a defensive role. I think he can play that role as well, but I think the best way to play him is really about dual wielding and getting in some serious damage, because that's his main focus as a slayer. So I'll normally have him in the main party. If not him, then swapping him out with Woljif. Next we have Rhaegal. So Rhaegal is a lawful evil gnome, and he is a Hell Knight. So very interesting personality, lawful evil. So this guy is completely ruthless in his tactics and his thoughts about discipline. But in a way, although he's evil, he's lawful evil, and believes passionately in fight against the demons. So he is still aligned with your cause. He's just got a very different way of going about it to most people. He does come across as very sort of dispassionate, not really caring about people, but for him it's all about the greater cause and doing things right. And again, he can seem a bit odd to have him in the team just in terms of his personality, but anyway, he's one of those people I'd rather have him with me rather than against me, because he's quite ruthless towards the opposition as well. And it's good to kind of have somebody like that supporting you as the leader as well, looking up to you and respecting you. So yeah, I think he's a good interesting companion, and he does certainly wind some of the others up. Interesting also to have a gnome as a Hell Knight and going in there into the melee combat is quite an interesting mix there. Normally in terms of gnomes, normally expect them to be sort of back row spellcasters, so he's very different. He's all about melee damage, so he hasn't got any spells. In terms of his in terms of where you meet him, so it'll be into sort of the second act after you've left Kinabres and you're heading towards Dresden. You'll need to make a stopover in Reliable Redoubt. I think it's Reliable Redoubt, and there's a little quest that will play through there. Again, I think he's somebody, if you don't know where to look, you could miss him, so make sure that you make that detour on the way to Dresden so you can pick him up. In terms of equipment, so he comes already with I think this is what army came with, adamantine full plate, so he's really the only person who can wear this, so it makes him very durable up front. And he comes with a gnome hooked hammer. I've just swapped him out with a great axe, basically a two-handed weapon to get some more damage in. So I personally, you could probably vary his role slightly. I tend to use him in the off-tank role with a great axe and to do some good damage. And because he's quite durable. And you can really get him stuck in on the front row and supporting the main tank. So basically I keep him in that sort of second slot in the front row alongside my main tank. And I tend to use either him or Sealer in that role. If I'm not using Sealer, then I'll use Rhaegal there. And the last one, he's my animal companion that goes with the Cavalier. So that is the companions that I have so far, which is most of them, to be honest. I believe there is also an opportunity to recruit, if you've got Vendrak like myself, to recruit Lan later on, but you need to kind of follow the quest through correctly. I think also if you take the mythic pass of the demon, there's another companion as well that you can pick up. And if you follow on with Social's quest, another companion, his brother, will join you quite late in the game. So I think there are a few more companions that you can pick up, but these are the main ones, and that's how I use them in terms of my party setup. So hopefully you found that useful. If you did like the video, please do like, share and comment. Please let me know if you agree with me, if not, who your favorite companions are, which ones you don't like, who you have in your main party. And if you would like to see more videos similar to this one, please do subscribe to the channel as well, and I will see you on the next one.